I'll start with a quick epigraph. What is a poet? An unhappy man who hides deep anguish in his heart, but whose lips are so formed that when the sigh and cry pass through them, it sounds like lovely music. And people flock around the poet and say, "Sing again soon." That is, may new sufferings torment your soul, but your lips be fashioned as before, for the cry would only frighten us, but the music, that is blissful. Soren Kierkegaard. Not so long ago, say 100,000 years, give or take, a clan of humans sat huddled around a fire. It was a full moon night, milky and opulent. Every star was visible then, every constellation intersected and contested with each other in the void, the scorpion versus the ram, the lion versus the bear, like some glowing intergalactic gladiatorial death match. The hominids wore animal skins upon themselves, so their hands were smooth, but their arms and backs were hairy and striped, and tusks jutted out from their faces and horns from the tops of their heads. They played games of chance with whittled bones and animal teeth, filled their stomachs with flanks of safari venison, and got high on fingerfuls of fermented honey scooped straight out of a hive, which they passed around in a circle. And every few seconds, one of them would look over their shoulder into the tall grass, waving like seaweed ghosts in the breeze, and argue with their recently discovered consciousness if those glowing dots out there in the brush were fireflies mating or the lurking eyes of a famished saber-toothed tiger. A bowl of rank liquid was passed around, something that was said to be a gift from a god who was a man but also a fish, and a woman sometimes, and also a deer, depending on who you asked. The people drank with both hands and hissed at the bitterness, rejoiced in the dulling of their sapience, anything to take the edge off of the irksome knowledge of good and evil. One of them raised his fingers into the night air, transfixed them into strange and mystical shapes, and casted shadows against the moon. Here is the story of our people. And before any musical instrument had been invented or paintbrush fashioned, the shaman made the sounds of rushing water and of raging fire and of the lowing of beasts and of the crying of men and of the vacant sound of nothing at all. And he paced back and forth and in revolutions around the flame, and he contorted his face and body, and he made magic with his voice. He casted spells, blew dust and flower petals from his palms, picked up some bones and rocks, clasped them in his hands, and chanted into his stickman creation. He breathed into its nostrils and lowered the creature beside his feet to dance between his legs like a stringless puppet, and the people were singing and raising their voices to the purple, star-pricked dome of the heavens, and they had fewer words back then to scream out. Sun, moon, day and night, water and fire, earth and wind, man, woman, and monster. Then a child pointed up at the sky and said, "Where does the sun go at night?" And the people stopped in their tracks and looked at one man, and the shaman raised his palm and said back to the child, "I know where the sun goes." And he spoke, and he explained, and the child, thirstier for truth now, said, "And where does the rain come from?" And the shaman pointed to the horizon and said back to the child, "I know where the rain comes from." And he sang something, but now the child had been emboldened to ask his final question, the one it had wanted to ask all along. It leaned back into its mother's chest, and the spot beside them was cold and empty, and the child said, "And where did my father go?" And the shaman placed his hand against his heart and said to the child, "I know where your father waits for you." Time passed. More recently, say in the first few millennium BC, megalithic supercities rose up in the fertile land between two ancient rivers. Sumer, Assyria, Babylon, and more waged war against one another in the sands. They constructed ziggurats and towers made of marble building blocks so tall they might roll God's ankle. They invented the calendar and the zodiacs. They had a coat of law and many coats of bronze and growing piles of gold coins, rubies, and emeralds. They even had an epic myth of a man, not quite mortal, who was taller and nobler than the rest of us, who ventured into the underworld and plucked wisdom from the depths of the pit for the sake of all humanity. There was a story of a flood, tales of giants who walked the earth among us, the offspring of mere men and angels. There were talks of outcasts and of demons, of creatures who looked like men but had the heads of bulls, of a mighty faraway people who were once great but were lost to the sea because they became too big for their britches. Around that time, along the amniotic shores of the Mediterranean, a tribe sprouted up, a group of people who constantly wandered through the wilderness, had moments of dominion, fell into exile, then slavery, then the wilderness again, then crafted a kingdom, then lost it again, and so on and so forth. And all the while, every few generations, one person among the public would wander off from the crowd to the top of a mountain, or into the middle of the desert, or into the remotest trough of the farthest valley, and this person would go out to commune with something greater, because, as Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, put it, the only true wisdom lives far from mankind, out in the great loneliness, and can be reached only through suffering. Privation and suffering alone open the mind to all that is hidden to others. And this was no easy task. It is no job, be not mistaken. This position we speak of is not like any farmer or metallurgist. It is a vocation in the truest sense, from the Latin vocare, to call. It is a calling. Yes, it is a terrifying prospect, a burdensome responsibility. That is why most are hesitant at first. Take as an ancient example the story of he who was known as the weeping prophet, for when he warned his people of their impending woe, they laughed at him and cast him out. His name was Jeremiah, and when first presented with his purpose and ordination, he cried out in fear, "O Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child." And the response was swift, "Say not, I am a child, for thou shalt go to all that I shall send thee, and whatsoever I command thee, thou shalt speak. Be not afraid. I have put my words in thy mouth. I have this day set thee over the nations and of the kingdoms, to root out, to pull down, and to destroy, and to throw down, to build, and to plant." Such is the purpose of the poet. The poet protests, proclaims, professes, and prophesies. The poet displays merciless exactness to remove society's rot and the soul's debris. More time passes. Quite recently, just a few hundred years ago, the Gutenberg press is created. Messages spread like wildfire amongst the masses. There are pretend poets in the street, false prophets screaming on every corner. We are surrounded by supposed seers, soothsayers, and propagandists, but some truth-tellers prevail. Those not concerned with what is fashionable, and they are no longer stuck at the tops of pyramids or out beyond the bounds of unleashed nature. They are in the public, raising up the people. They tell them there is a change coming. Gather up your forks and knives and trophies and melt them all down. We are casting bullets for the coming retaliation. An uprising is imminent. The people have spoken. Thus, the poet is the first revolutionary, the timeless renegade. Every noble cause has begun with one well-crafted paragraph. Every recent revolt brought out from the nearest coffee shop, tavern, or library. Yes, here is the purpose of the poet. Here is the poem's potency, that it is a tool of both art and war. It is the ornate syntax, that is the gilded cutlery set, the one you save just for the finest guests, that is melted down into the musket ball and bayonet of verse and sonnet. For whereas any other art has devices specific to it, as in a piano to music, the brush to paint, cameras to film, the poet's only tool is the most spectacular yet mundane tool of them all: the word. The poet makes art out of the same thing with which we construct our grocery lists. What other art can claim such a hurdle to overcome? And yet, don't all other art forms have the same final esteem? Don't all other mediums of expression aspire for that ultimate compliment, that they might be described as poetic? Thus, the poet is both a janitor and a prince. It is a lonely office, tasked with guarding and keeping custody of our language, the thing which ideas themselves are made out of. The poet is the watchman who safeguards the holy grammar, and there are many among us. We are them who keep that oath. The wilderness is all around. The great loneliness persists between one another. There is a begging revelation that has not been realized. There is a dripping, succulent poem aching to be written. We are now in the modern age, and we consider ourselves to be well-dressed, well-mannered, and quite civilized. We believe we have outgrown our myths and magics, but our superstitions have not gone anywhere. They have just become more proper. We have maintained our same prehistoric rituals, dazzled by laser pointers and flashing lights. We are surrounded by a nauseous superfluity of words, dizzying nonsense, and deep-seated contradictions, talking heads spewing slapstick philosophy and changing sides so fast it gives us all a fatal case of whiplash. We suppose we have overcome our sorcery, but all we have done is replace the rainmaker for the weatherman. Therefore, it is time to dig deep. The role of the poet has not changed, it never will, and it has remained far from useless. If anything, it has become even more necessary. Our culture sags and discolors. We have to scavenge profoundly into our hidden memories and subgenetic truths for the beautiful facts which we drank through our mother's umbilical cords. This is an age of nonsense. This is an age of wasted words. At the moment, we are embarking on a strange de-evolutionary process which will revert us back to thoughtless, slimy invertebrate amphibians who have a mild body temperature and no eyelids, much less convictions, and in short time our hearts will become vestigial structures just like our appendices. Muscles not put in use shrivel at the insertion and wag helplessly. Our tongues have already seemed to take the shapes of processed hams, pink, boneless, evocative of some flavor, but ultimately insipid. I can feel the whittling atrophy of meaningless. Can you also? The terrible realization of divine loneliness upon the hollow wake of every disposable sentence. There must be another way. There must be a reclamation of our symbols, or else our words will become just another worthless currency. And when that happens, what then will be the value of our cries? Just another empty animal sound. No more conversations, no more enlightenment or illumination, just moans and cackles from a painted wall parody of a zoo exhibit. We face a crisis of losing that which made us human in the first place. The poet is needed painfully, most urgently. I do tell you this. I could have been a rich man. I could have been a king. I could have had 1,000 horses and twice as many concubines, but I could not stand the stench of manure and perfume. I could have been a warlord. I could have been a celebrity, but the public's hate and fear, the masses' love and adoration, it is all the same. Fleeting, fickle, fruitless. Consider lastly the argument between the poet and the clown in the prelude of von Goethe's Faust. The clown wants to give the people their fare, to amuse them in a way that garners widespread appreciation, but the poet disagrees. Don't speak to me of crowds at whose mere sight the spirit flees us. That you could confine the surging rabble that draws us with might to compromise our every great design. Lead me to heaven's silence, whose delight the poet only feels. Let love combine with friendship to create and nurse with godlike hands the gift of verse. What deep in our breast was thus inspired? What shy lips babbled in a quiet hour, clumsy perhaps and rarely as desired, is swallowed by a savage moment's power. And years may pass before it has acquired its perfect form and opens like a flower. Glitter is coined to meet the moment's rage. The genuine lives on from age to age. Yes, I could have been a rich man, I could have been a king, I could have been a warlord, celebrity, or a clown, but in the end, I became none of those things. I became a poet instead, and the poet says this: I will live forever. I have dwelt in heaven's silence, and I left with several stanzas. Go ahead and nail me up on any poster right next to my pamphlet. My life is my thesis. I am not ashamed of what I believe. I will not succumb to cheap superstition. I am not afraid. I will show you what you are, for I know what I am. My gospel is not the scrolling words of the newsman on the colored television set. I will not be a worrisome slave to market speculation. I have things to say, things that matter. Every tragedy, personal, public, or providential, can be justified only one way, and that is through poetry. And it was our first medicine and will also be our final obituary. It was our first antidote for the pangs of our wonderment, and nothing has come to take its place, though many things have tried. Again, it is a vocation, and every few generations or so, some children feel the calling, and they wander out and say the words that they can't quite explain how they know, but they know them nonetheless. So if you hear them already, there is no ignoring it now. It's much too late for that. Melt it all down. Be a poet, for God's sake. Tell me where the sun goes from where the rain comes and where my Father waits for me. Go out to all the nations and root out, pull down, build up, and plant. Fear not the pain, sorrow, and privation. It is your task now to make sense of it all. This is a call to arms. Mayday, Mayday. I am broadcasting loud and clear on every frequency to all free peoples. Please save us from ourselves, and may the day come that I see it. Taste your language when you speak it. Lead your people to the promised land. Sharpen your tongue and swing it. Make a weapon of your words, because in the beginning that is all there was, and in the end too, that is all there will be. Congratulations to the winners.